Okay, today is Monday, and if you can hear me, then you are listening to Straight Talk with your host, this intellectual Kate Taylor, and her co-host, the magical, wondrous, and awesome, and not just because I'm married to him, Christopher Crash Jesus Taylor. This is HTLA Radio 1, the world's best talk radio on the world's first, all brilliantly exceptional, all utterly original talk entertainment programming ever. If you haven't yet been there, then head on over to HTLA's sexy new world at www.htlaradio1.com. That's the number one, just like us. This is a huge week for us because we've got more than one show that's among our favorites for your discerning pleasure. But right now, put your listening ears on because you are not going to want to miss this very special episode of Straight Talk, where we get right to the heart of the human rights violations issue with the filmmakers and cast of the new Netflix original film, E-Team.
That's right. Lucky to catch them on their busiest press day, but you really rocked some poignant questions about why they do the work they do and how even the filmmakers were changed by this experience. I did, but there was so much more I would have loved to have gotten into as a further understanding of these remarkable people. As you know, to me, Straight Talk is just that, more than just the experience of entertainment. So we'd like to think we open minds and at least give one person listening a different way to look at the issues that affect them, that affect all of us. So it's also why I hope you'll keep your iTunes, tablets, and browsers locked in with us for all of our shows each week. You got it. Now we're trimming our intro for you so we can get right straight to the talk for you listeners. So just head on over to HTLARadio1.com and be sure to click on our super sponsors and advertisers and visit their most excellent offerings.
That's right, sir. Our super new all-inclusive station site has everything on it you need and need to know. So cruise on over there and enjoy your visit to the world of HTLA.
Ah, yeah. So if I'm correct, Netflix sent you over a screener of this film before it released, right?
Yes. The lovely folks in the PR department of Netflix Originals were kind enough to ensure we got to view the film prior to our interview with the principals.
Yeah, not we. You were sent the screener, so you watched it, following everyone's rules but mine as usual.
Well, yes, sir, I suppose. I'm a bit of a stickler for word keeping and all that, you know. But as we've got a lot to get to tonight, before we get rolling here, as usual, would you be so kind as to get to the station business, if you please?
Oh, absolutely. Straight Talk tonight is brought to you in part by Tim Hortons New York and their 8 fancy, free, fun-filled locations to serve you 24 hours a day. Oh, yeah. Enjoying some of that right now. And Netflix Original Productions. Also, PreSonus. We are a PreSonus broadcast studio here at HTLA, and that's why we sound so darn good. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And also, as always, by the Fierce Kitty Omnimedia.
Meow.
Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter for the station. It's nice and easy at HTLA Radio, the number 1. For me, it's at Crash Talkin', and for my feisty wife's personal Twitter, you can follow her at Fierce Kitty Kate.
Thank you, my most awesome co-host ever.
Yes, well, finally remember to join us here every week because you never know who's going to show up on Straight Talk to talk straight. Now, yes, before we roll, my loveliest of lovelies, it's time to say it.
Tonight's show is... It is...
Tonight's show is broken. That's what tonight's show is.
Powered by Procast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, finally. Okay, awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, yes, we have to keep it a little bit light, especially in light of the seriousness of the show today. But
well,
you know, we do. We've got to do what we've got to do, right? All right. So here we go. So tonight we are promoting a Netflix original film that, honestly, I recommend everyone within earshot head on over to Netflix right now to watch. Not only is it critical to allow us all to understand the need for human rights interventions, but I believe that this particular film can change so many opinions on why it's critical for those that can get involved. At risk to their own personal safety and family serenity, do get involved.
Yes.
So
Yes, and I will be injecting freely throughout.
yes, you will.
That's right. That's true, Kate. Well, I still hold opinions, the opinions I do, I should say, about, the U.S. feeling that they are global police and game makers. I hate to credit those willing to make a career out of going to places that others run from and reporting on atrocities that others are unwilling to even hear about. But as we do so well, let's talk straight on Straight Talk here to straighten this all out.
Okay. Yes, well, we will. I understand where you're coming from with that. It's tough, being family people ourselves, the thought of putting ourselves in harm's way and not coming home to our children, especially our son who's 2. And if I go to the store when it's bedtime, he just loses it.
Oh.
He just loses it.
He's like Putin on a bad day.
Could you imagine me being in Syria and he's trying to go to bed? And I'm only at ShopRite. It's just, just wouldn't be a good scene. So I understand what you're saying, but you'll see, and maybe, over the course of this show, because I do know the film did kind of change as you watched it, it did kind of change your opinion. But so the film E-Team is a film created by Ross Kaufman, who won an Academy Award for his film Born into Brothels, which, was one of the very first kind of social documentaries aside of the U.S. issues that I really watched. And it was a brilliant film. He put cameras into the hands of the children that occupied the brothels in India and let them document their life. And I said this to him during the interview. You'll probably hear it later. The joy that emanated through these children, through this camera, and having this task to do, this project to do, how it just lit them up and changed them.
Yeah.
It was just immense. It's the simple things in life, the things that really matter. It's completely evident. And I really believe that's why you won an Academy Award for that, because, it's evident right there.
Well, Louis Lawless, my filmmaking mentor, he always taught me that the truth is what sells.
Right.
And, coming from him and his 30-year background of Hollywood, that's pretty much the universal core of untruth.
Right.
It was such a dichotomy, a juxtaposition for him to say that to me. But, as my training went on in filmmaking, of course, that's ultimately what I realized, too, which is often why when we're watching a television series or something and I'm telling you, well, that's not the way it is, they wouldn't do that.
Right.
And you kind of pull me back to Hollywood Center by saying, well, yeah, but this is entertaining.
Exactly.
Right. So with these particular filmmakers, I've got a kind of a special kinship to them because they're holding to the truth is it's very gripping.
And as you'll see, and as we continue, it's quite there's no flinching, in this kind of filmmaking. Absolutely.
No.
So part of the team that made this, as I said, Ross Kaufman, and then Katie Chevigny, she's an Emmy-winning documentarian. She actually won an Emmy for the news and documentary category, and she's been making documentaries for many, many years. So tonight we have with us the creators as well as the stars of the film, Oli Solvang and Anna Neistat. It centers mostly on their experiences in Syria, but as you watch the film, you come to realize that Anna and Oli are also a couple. They've met during their work in Eastern Europe, both employed by the Human Rights Watch organization. The film also shows their family life in Paris with Anna's son, Danya, and later we learn of their plans to add to their family and what is in store for them in the future. So there's quite a lot going on, and as we all know in storytelling, it's the drama, it's the gripping, it's the conflict, So the film also shows the work and struggles of 2 other Human Rights Watch associates, Fred Abrahams and Peter Buchert. Anna and Oli lead the film with their urgent work in Syria, attempting to stop President Assad's regime from detaining, torturing, and killing protesters and civilians. The film begins by lulling you into a sense of, this is just another documentary.
That's kind of what I thought on those opening sequences there, yeah.
Yeah. And despite that small sense of normalcy we see in the Paris apartment, that quickly changes as they board a flight, are picked up and driven to the Syrian border at night to run across and enter the country unseen. So it was right there that the film kind of took on a whole different, tone for me too. Their role is to expose violations of international law, so they can't just, kind of walk in the front door kind of thing, right?
Right.
So it was so striking also the children in the opening bits holding the signs and flags during a nighttime protest against a local killing. And during this time, all I kept thinking was, the image of American children being read stories, drinking warm milk, being tucked into a safe and secure bed with an affectionate kiss, like our kids, right?
Well, like you always say, we're all the same on the inside.
Well, that's true. But then these children, they go to bed with, okay, and now if you hear this, you do this, and the emergency exits are there, and, these kind of things. And, it's really, really, really difficult.
And we say we live in terror, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's the juxtaposition is unavoidable, and especially if you're not accustomed to the brutalities of casualties of war, So be warned, this film is not for the squeamish in parts. There are victims plainly depicted in their shredded state as family members mourn them right there in their living rooms and stuff, In a handful of scenes, the victims are clearly shot and even burned.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
There's no shortage of atrocities in this film at all. Absolutely not.
Right.
They're just it's kind of staggering to me too, because originally my thought about these people was, well, they're just nuts. Why are they going in and doing all this? Of course, so and so in whatever country is doing that to his people. So what? It's their business. It's their country. But of course, upon seeing the film and actually seeing what they go through and what they're trying to accomplish, one's mind goes back to World War II and what was going on in there, and all of the war crimes tribunals subsequently after that, and
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is very poignant, as you'll see. Yeah. I mean, Milosevic, and I'll talk about that a little later on in the third or fourth segment about how he literally blames Fred Abrahams for his being at trial. I mean, literally.
Well, he was the reason.
Well, no, his crimes were the reason.
Oh, okay. Well,
that kind of thing.
Well, no, do what you want. Just don't get caught.
Ah, okay.
See? Well, Fred caught him. Okay, well, there
well,
you
that's
go.
true, too. And it wasn't just Fred. I mean, you'll see also a bit in that film where they just mass graves and the mass in the building that they uncover all these burned and shot and burned bodies, et cetera, these mass killings. That's, that was the bit. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. And, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just start talking now, because that's what we do here at HTLA. We talk. There we go.
We do. We talk a lot.
But I still can't help my feelings, and my feelings through this whole thing are still my feelings from before this whole thing. And yes, those things are atrocities, and yes, they're going on. And I couldn't even help but notice there in Syria when they went to that bombing in wherever it was, the Syrian government was the one who dropped the bomb. It was Syrian planes that they wanted to shoot down, these Syrians. Okay.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So they drop the bomb. They level 22 houses. They kill a bunch of children, and that was in 2013. Now, of course, this film is done. It's in the can, and it's out on Netflix, and I urge everybody to go see it. Now, who's dropping the bombs? Well, now it's us. The USA is dropping the bombs. Apparently hitting ISIS targets. But I'm telling you, there's still more 22 houses gone and more kids dead. But now we're doing it.
Right.
So I have to ask the question, yes, okay, great. You got Milosevic. Okay. What overall good is it doing?
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, we don't want to divert from actually the promotion of the film, but we are going to sidetrack a little bit because our opinions are actually what make Straight Talk what it is. But, and unfortunately, the interview was pre-recorded, so we can't actually go back to them right now. But, actually what they had filmed took place a couple of years before the film was released, too.
Right.
So I believe that in the interview, you'll hear them say it was like 3 years from inception to, the night we interviewed them.
Yeah, 3.5, I think.
To the premiere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, it's funny that you say that, because how does that impact now? What they do, the Human Rights Watch. I mean, are they just, interested in what the regimes of the dictators do, and, or is it, casualties caused by us? I mean, do they get involved when the military does human rights violations? Our military? Or no?
Apparently, the Human Rights Watch is all about just these injustices all over the world. So I'm kind of submitting here and now in today's environment, where less than 30 days ago we began airstrikes in Syria, supposedly to ISIS targets, but we all know how good intelligence is. So you can't tell me they're not leveling apartment buildings where a known ISIS guy might be, but, there's also 22 children in there we just killed.
God, I can't even think of it, especially after seeing the film and seeing the children in the film.
Well, that's right. But what I'm saying is for the actual Syrian people itself, nothing has changed. Just the ownership of the bombs has changed. And, I have to wonder, it's all great that you're operating under this guise of, we're going to bring them to justice in a court of whatever. But it still goes on. It's just somebody else dropping the bombs. To me, it's kind of like, it's almost like U.S. politics. Well, let's create this thing over here so nobody notices what we're doing here.
Well, that's the thing now. That's the question. See, now you're making me want to do a follow-up show and delve more into what they do, because to me, they can't uphold their standard of integrity, and if they're not investigating also the kind of crimes that are perpetrated by, just our country. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're obviously based, they have a headquarters in Paris, all that kind of thing. So it's not just here, but obviously the main one is in New York at the UN, all that kind of stuff. And so, do they follow up on American atrocities, or is it just foreign country atrocities? Mm-hmm. Now I'm really interested to know.
Well, and here's another question. Let's rewind all the way back to pre-Desert Storm.
Right.
Okay, Saddam Hussein's killing his own people in the streets. So what do? We roll in with everything we got. Operation Shock and Awe, I believe, was the term. Mm-hmm. And we leveled most everything and straightened stuff out. Okay, well, how is us doing that any better or worse than Saddam Hussein doing what he was doing?
Right.
And, who in Iraq picked up the phone and went, USA, come, 911, help, please.
Oh, well, there had to be somebody. There has to be somebody. And they have people, I guess, affiliates of the group, in all these places.
Well, there has been a lot of talk around the not mainstream media about, George Bush being wanted for war crimes and Dick Cheney being wanted for war crimes, but somehow none of that ever happens. I would almost challenge the Human Rights Watch to maybe investigate into some of that too. I mean,
yeah, but see, that's hard for me as an American.
Well, yeah, because we're the police force.
No, it's not even a matter of the police force. And as I go into a little bit later on, also, you'll see why it's necessary. Human Rights Watch, I don't think, wants to be a police force in the way that America likes to go in there and have a controlling say in what goes on in the government of the country, because then we can keep our assets and allies secure. The Human Rights Watch is really just about the civilians that are caught between, the terrible dictatorial regimes, as well as, the Americans who want to keep the controlling interest in their assets and their allies, but also, whomever else might be involved in the running of that country, or whoever has a say in that country's politics or policies or whatever it is, right?
Right, yeah.
So, on that level, these are just, when you look at Anna and Ole in their home setting, in their parents' apartment where Ole's playing the keyboards and, they're just being kind of normal couple,
sure.
A normal couple. You can really see that these are two people that each in their own separate way, got involved with this organization to better the lives of innocent civilians in whatever way that they could. They just felt that extreme calling to do that for whatever reason.
Well, the road to hell is paved with the best of intentions.
Well, true. And then they brought, that brought them together for their own love story and things like that, while they were working over there in Chechnya.
Well, I'll grant you it's dramatic. I mean, yes, there's a lot of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie in these two, in the sense that they're not famous actors, but in the sense that they're actually doing a lot of stuff that Brad and Angie do in the movie.
In the film, right.
So I guess to that end, it's heroic, and they're larger than life, and they're very intelligent, and the fluidity, they speak multi-languages and deal with all these foreign governments. And
sure.
All of that, don't get me wrong, is extremely commendable. I'm just wondering about the bigger picture, when you have instances like what I just outlined.
Right.
I would question the...
Well, as far as I know, Ole and Anna's work, at least as far as I know, at least as depicted in the film, and that's my research. I've read some papers written by Ole. I've read some articles. If you go to the Human Rights Watch organization's website, that speak to different issues and things. But to me, the kind of work that, Abrams did with Milosevic and literally changing, and we'll get into that later too, the policies of how America does intervene in human rights violations and things like that, and as well as the work that Peter had done in Libya with the Gaddafi regime and things like that. Well, that's more of a poignant human story too, because as I'll get into later, when you see him at his farm in Geneva, juxtaposed against the stuff that was going on in Libya and, his son, the time they spent together. Well, you'll see later on. I'll get into that later. But, like I said, it's there. Those stories to me were even more poignant than the Anna and Ole story. So, but we're going to get into the interview when we come back from our first commercial break now. And you'll be able to hear from the filmmakers and the principals themselves. And, and then we'll carry on with the show. So just stay with us. We'll be back in 2.
And you're listening to Straight Talk with Kate and Crash on HTLA Radio 1, New York.
So do you guys think being fast is better than being slow?
Yes! It's better to be fast, to not be bitten by a werewolf, and then you'll be turned into one, and you'll have to stay in, and then you'll have to get shaped because you'll be too hot, and then you're like... which means I wish I was back to a human.
What?
It's not complicated. Faster is better. And AT&T is the nation's fastest 4G LTE network for your iPhone 5.
The world is facing one of the biggest crises in the history of history. Girls are getting hotter and hotter. This is causing guys to lose their cool. It's happening everywhere. That's why the people at Axe have developed the new Axe Chill collection. It helps guys keep their cool before it's too late. Girls are getting hotter. Keep your cool with the new Chill collection from Axe.
You walked into the hotel as a 5. But when she saw the room, you turned into a weird 7. When she saw the rooftop pool, you went to 11. You two should probably get a room. Oh, that's right. You already did. At Planet Earth's #1 accommodation site, Booking.com. Booking.yeah.
White Rum has a new captain. Introducing the all-new Captain Morgan White Rum. 5 times distilled for a smoother taste.
4th down, Coach. What do we do?
I'll tell you what we do.
I want you to go on the field. Look for anything with an O.
Let's kill them with kindness. Jimmy, I want you to make balloon animals. Tyler, make little tea cozy, something fun.
Are you okay?
We will win this for Mother Russia!
Coach, eat a Snickers.
Why is that, Chief?
You get a little loopy when you're hungry. Better.
Now let's go for it!
Go get him, guys!
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
And we're back with Kate and Crash on Straight Talk, HTLA Radio1.com.
Oh, there you go. Yes, you are back with the Kate and the Crash here at HTLA Radio 1. HTLA Radio Studio 2, actually, is the studio we were in. 65 degrees tonight in Central Park. It's beautiful. Oh, yeah, not a cloud in the sky. Who said anything is bad without being bad? There you go. I'm just mumbling now. So without further ado, we're going to go on ahead and we're going to play the interview we did with the principals of this film in the segment now. Let's listen in and then join us as we continue to discuss this super film.
So this project especially is really one that I wanted to do, obviously. Ross, I've seen Born into Brothels. I was touched then at the joy and the hope and, just the sheer amazement, that the children lit up the screen, that sort of thing. And I've always been a fan of documentary films and, shining a spotlight on things that we here in this country don't often get to see. And Katie as well, I know you've been doing documentary films for a really long time. So what was the attraction to this particular project for both either whomever wants to go first?
Yeah, so this is Katie. Ross and I were interested in working on a project together. We've been colleagues for many years and worked on different projects. Ross had shot some things of mine, and I had produced some things of Ross's, but we were looking for something to collaborate on as directing partners.
Oh, okay.
We knew a little bit about the work of Human Rights Watch, but not a lot. And it turns out that Human Rights Watch knew a little bit about our work because we both had past films in the Human Rights Watch Film Festival. And around the time that Ross and I were looking to do a project together, we learned that Human Rights Watch had never in the past allowed an independent film crew access to their work.
Oh, okay.
They only made videos in-house, that were for their own purposes.
Right.
So, and they're wonderful videos, but it's a different animal independent film crew who has editorial control make their own product, right? So Ross and I talked to them about the possibility of making this film, and we were very firm with Human Rights Watch that we needed to have editorial control, and Human Rights Watch, to their credit, had faith in us, and they said, maybe we'll give you this access.
And we were very clear with them that we would take a warts and all approach. So they were very courageous in letting us make this film. And they'd also had a lot of other filmmakers who come over the years to want to make a film. And I think because they knew who we were and we really talked them through it, what we were planning on doing, they gave us access.
Right. How long from project discussion to inception to, completion did this take?
3 years.
No, I think it was 75 years.
Feels that way.
Well, we first met the E-Team, Anya and Ula, Fred and Peter, in 2008. So it's, that was a long time ago. And we started filming in 2011 and editing in 2013, and then we premiered the film in 2014.
Right. Wow.
So we filmed for 2.5 years. Shot 350 hours of footage and spent a year editing the film.
Wow. Oh, man, I would hate that.
I hate that.
Editing's the worst, right? Now, I have to ask, I know you've done things that have been poignant and touching before in your documentaries, but this particular project, when you began, this goes to Ross and Katie because I have other questions for Oli and Anna too, but at the end, how had it really, this particular thing, changed you?
How did this film change us?
Yes.
Made me not want to have any more kids. Everyone had children on this film.
That's just sort of a joke answer.
That's a joke. I'm just kidding.
That's okay. We have them too. We know.
Hard question, actually. I don't know.
I think, let's see. It's hard to, it's kind of like we're still in the middle of it, right?
Right.
So we're actually affected that much. We're still being changed by it. It's being released tonight. So that's part of what's going on. I think I would say we had a good conversation last night at a screening with Anya and Ula, and, it's possible that Ross and I were heading in a direction before we made this film, the way a lot of Americans feel, where you can be kind of cynical about the difference that Americans say can make in problems overseas. You know, what is it worth getting involved in these morass of problems, say in Syria? Like, it just seems so hopeless.
Right.
But I think after spending a lot of time really learning about the intensity of this investigative work, I think we feel like it's been an antidote to our own cynicism, should we have any, about trying to make a difference. You know, that it's too easy to say, oh, there's nothing you can do.
Right.
And that it's much harder to say, well, we have to do something, so let's figure out what the constructive thing is we can do. That's the really hard question. So that, I think, is maybe a way in which we've been challenged and changed. What do you think, Ross? Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's excellent. We had the same conversation before this interview. You know, my husband and I, we talk, you know, as Americans, and we sit here and what makes us policing, you know, the world. Why should we do that? And there's so many problems here, et cetera, et cetera. But, and I think we had a little divergent viewpoints on that too. But, you know, it is hard. I mean, unless you're actually there and you see it, you know. And I have a great question for Anna whenever she's ready to answer also. And don't mind if it jumps around, because like I said, I'll put this all together in post. But as a mother, you know, seeing these things that you see there, you know, it must be incredibly hard, not just as, you know, a human rights worker and caring about the people you're there speaking to, but, you know, from one mother to a mother who's just seen her child blown up or whatever it is, it must be incredibly difficult to continue. So is that the case?
It is difficult, and I think, I do think that being a mother does add a dimension that otherwise you probably don't have. It leads to this additional identification with your witnesses, which in many ways is harmful from a professional perspective, because we always need to have a certain level of distance, because we're not there to just sympathize. We're there to collect the information and do something with this information to hopefully bring change to the lives of the people that we're talking to.
Right.
And for that, you do need. So it is hard, and it's sometimes absolutely heartbreaking. But at the same time, I think it strengthens me as a mother, because when I see what other mothers are going through and how they manage to demonstrate the resilience and courage that they do in these absolutely horrifying, extraordinary circumstances, I think it puts your own life in perspective, including your own life as a mother in perspective.
Right. I know, because it brings tears to my eyes when I see certain scenes, and I just couldn't bear it. I don't know. The resilience, like you say, it's incredible. It's just utterly incredible. So for each of you individually, when we talk about something as you know, huge as these kind of atrocities that are going on in the world, really, what could you hope, if there was a minimum or a maximum or an ideal, or what sort of change would each of you individually hope to have by continuing this work that you do?
This is Ulla. That's a very big question. I think we all, well, at least from Anya and I, and Human Rights Watch researchers, when we go into these situations, I think we go in with very big ambitions in terms of what we hope to be able to do, what kind of impact we hope that we will have, and inevitably in many situations that those expectations get a reality check. But I think you kind of need to have that kind of optimistic, or not optimistic, but very ambitious goals going in, or at least believing that you'll be able to make a change. Because if not, some of the work of our colleagues, for example, being able to completely ban entire categories of weapons that are harmful to civilians, such as landmines or cluster bombs,
right.
And significantly reduce the use of these weapons, that has a really significant lasting impact on civilians in all wars everywhere. So I think there's a combination of having, aiming for the sky or aiming really high, and then pushing and trying to get as much as you can, which sometimes You can be frustrated, but that's the reality of it.
Right. Well, that was a great answer. I read the article, Syria, River of Death. I have to say, every time I've done any kind of research for this, it's just so, overwhelming, the things that you read, and it's hard to imagine. And anyone who wants to take this question can, but, as Americans, we say we never allow, what we see going on in the world to occur in our country. We do this and we do that, and, we wouldn't let them come in and do this kind of stuff. And what do you think is the primary difference in the cultures that, we as Americans would, take up arms and be the Americans that we say we are, versus, the other cultures that, seemingly just let this stuff go on, and the protests that we've seen, yes, the brave people that do protest, but, en masse, we sit there and say, my God, how did it get that far? Okay, so I know you guys have other press to do today, so I just have a couple more questions if we could. And this one I definitely want to get out because I know that, as Americans here, we all are interested. We would say, again, none of this stuff would happen here. We'd take up arms. We wouldn't let it get that far. So what do you think the primary difference in culture or, people, or maybe it's, their level of advancement or whatever that occurs that makes these so prevalent elsewhere and not here?
Well, I think, we've been working in many different situations in many different places and in many different cultures. And actually, I personally don't think that there are any sort of what's the right expression? There is no guarantees anywhere. Under the right or under the wrong circumstances, really bad things could happen pretty much anywhere.
Exactly.
And people who are otherwise pretty good are capable of doing pretty bad things if they feel that they're forced to, if they feel that their own survival is at stake, or their own community, or if somebody is attacking their faith. So I unfortunately think that there's nothing sort of predetermined about these things. It could happen in many different places, and it all comes down to circumstances and what people feel that they're forced to do.
Right. No, I agree. I think that as Americans, we get in our comfort zone and we think it can't ever happen here. And I think that's pretty important why these films are so important and the work that you do is so important. Because like you say never.
It was interesting to see when I was in Ukraine. I was in Ukraine recently in August, I think, and doing work there in documenting violations in the armed conflict going on there. And one of the other emergency missions that both Human Rights Watch and Amnesty had going at the same time was Ferguson. Which I think came perhaps as a surprise on many people. So I think it goes to show that you never know for sure what can happen.
Very true.
Or that this thin layer of civilization that you might see in some places that we consider to be developed democracies comes off very quickly the moment there is a threat, especially an external threat. And that's very scary to see in many different places around the world, including America.
Right.
And I'm looking up a quote by Peter Moss who said, there are so many seams along which a society can be torn apart by manipulators. And that's true for any society.
Yes, it is. What is next for you each? Now, we're from here.
Well, I made quite a big change. I made a big change. After 13 years, I left Human Rights Watch a month and a half ago to move to Amnesty International. And I'm responsible for all of research that Amnesty International does. And that's a very big job. That's a very big challenge. And I'm working on so many different things at the same time that it would take 2 hours to list them. So, but it's a lot of different things, including supervising the kind of the work that an equivalent of emergencies team does at Amnesty International.
Right. Well, I'm sure you'll do very well with that.
And for me, I've been working for the last couple of months on Ukraine, documenting violations of the laws of war there. So I think that's going to occupy my immediate future.
Okay. You're going to miss each other, though. You're going to be apart. Is that difficult? That's going to be tough?
That is that is one of the, it's a bit of a bummer. We're not able to work together as much as we used to now, working for two different organizations. But also, of course, having a small child, it means that one of us has to stay home at all times.
Right.
Which is fine, but it means that we see less of each other. I think in September we saw each other for 3 days in total, mainly for child handovers.
Aw, that must be so hard. Well, hopefully you'll be able to get some more time in the future, things even out and smooth out for you both. You deserve it, I think. The work you do is so amazing. I was telling my husband, to me, it's the true heroes. You go there, you don't have to, you do this, you care about other people, and there should be more, I wish there were more like you. Maybe we wouldn't have such horribleness in the world. Ross, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Ross, what's next for you?
As documentary filmmakers, Katie and I are always tossing up about 10 balls in the air and hoping 1, 2, maybe 3 of them land. And it's one of those things where we have a number of projects that we're thinking about, and some of them are closer to landing than others, and we'll see what happens in the next few weeks.
Okay, well, I hope you'll keep us in the loop.
We're quite busy promoting E-Team because it's opening in theaters, around the U.S. in the next couple of weeks. So we're busy with that for another couple of weeks. People forget that there's this whole other job we do as independent filmmakers to get the film out in the world.
Very true. Well, we'll do our part. We'll keep it up there and out there for you. So
I should say that Katie and I are also both interested in scripted narrative films. So I'm developing a film that I've been writing with my wife for a while. So we'll see what happens with that as well.
Oh, that's good. I would love to see you do something feature-wise. Sure. I bet you that would be great. Looking forward to it. Well, thank you both for coming, and thank everyone for giving us this time. We appreciate it. We know you're so busy. We'll send you a copy of the show once it's done, and it's going to be on the website. At least for the next 2 weeks, you're going to get promoted on the website. So, and we are New York based, so as much as we can do, we will do. And,
thank you so much. It's wonderful. Thank you.
That's great.
You're welcome. Take care. God bless. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So do you guys think being fast is better than being slow?
Yes! It's better to be fast, to not be bitten by a werewolf, and then you'll be turned into one, and you'll have to stay in, and then you'll have to get shaved because you'll be too hot, and then you're like, which means I wish I was back to a human.
What?
It's not complicated. Faster is better. And AT&T is the nation's fastest 4G LTE network for your iPhone 5.
The world is facing one of the biggest crises in the history of history. Girls are getting hotter and hotter. This is causing guys to lose their cool. It's happening everywhere. That's why the people at Axe have developed the new Axe Chill collection. It helps guys keep their cool before it's too late. Girls are getting hotter. Keep your cool with the new Chill collection from Axe.
Have I got a treat for you? New clean whipped cream foundation from CoverGirl. A delicious new recipe whipped up by Clean Makeup. They took their clean, fresh foundation, added a dash of hydration, then whipped it to smooth, matte perfection. Finally, a non-drying whip that wears like a dream. What a treat from Clean. New clean whipped cream from easy, breezy, beautiful CoverGirl.
No one just hands you the title, most advanced technology in its class. It needs to be earned. Earned with smart beam headlamps. Earned with vented temperature control seats. Earned with an 8.4-inch touchscreen. And if you're driving one, you know what it means to earn something.
When your cable company keeps you on hold, you get angry. When you get angry, you go blow off steam. When you go blow off steam, accidents happen. When accidents happen, you get an eye patch. When you get an eye patch, people think you're tough. When people think you're tough, people want to see how tough. And when people want to see how tough, you wake up in a roadside ditch. Don't wake up in a roadside ditch. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV.
And we're back. You are listening to Straight Talk with Kate and Crash on HTLA Radio1.com. Yes, you are. And tonight, very, very special Straight Talk with Kate and Crash here in the HTLA 2 studios in New York. The Netflix original documentary, The E-Team. Yes, we just heard from the filmmakers and the two stars. They're from the film on our last segment there, and this documentary is nothing that you've never seen before. Overall, I don't think. It's just different conflicts. It's the new and improved conflict on today's headlines. So listening to them, talk about their work. It's very evident that they're passionate and all the rest of it. And they, for what it is, they certainly think that they're doing not only a service to the people of these war-torn countries, but also to the rest of the world in ensuring that human rights are watched. But you have to kind of ask yourself, where does that line get drawn? Before we had the interview there, when we were talking in the first segment, I was kind of like, it doesn't seem to be that it's the same to everybody. It seems to be that whoever the perceived bad guy is, it's okay as long as it's not us.
Well, right. We were discussing whether or not they had. I mean, I know Amnesty International's gotten involved in so-called American atrocities, things like that. I believe they were, really prevalent in the whole Abu Ghraib thing with the, when we did to the soldiers that we had kidnapped. Did we kidnap them? No, we didn't kidnap them. That we had taken prisoner and we held them there in Guantanamo and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
So I know that they got involved in that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So I believe that organization is more prevalent in getting involved in human rights violations domestically as well as abroad. Mm-hmm. But that perhaps Human Rights Watch is more, to where a current conflict is going on. I mean, I don't remember hearing about them in Mogadishu or in the Sudan or, in Darfur, which was a big one. I mean, I'm not saying they weren't there, but nothing that I've read in my research either. They weren't there.
This is kind of where I was kind of sort of heading for this segment. I really, I'm pretty sure that that they're not the only people that they have.
No, of course not. But before you continue any further, because on this show we talk straight and we don't always agree. A lot of times we do, but we don't always. And this is one of the times that we don't. Mm-hmm. And I do have to disagree about that. This documentary isn't anything you haven't seen before because. While, it's about war, and if you go to Netflix now, you can see many, many, many documentaries that have been made since 9/11, documenting the conflicts over there in the Middle East and all that kind of things, and the plight of our soldiers especially, all that kind of thing. So I think we're kind of getting a little bit used to seeing, those kind of atrocities in war and that sort of thing, and the casualties therein as well, So in that way, sure. But again, it's like you mentioned yourself, they don't have to go, whereas soldiers do. And this is their job. They've gone to university and they've graduated with, whatever degree, whether it was sociology or, psychology or fundraising or whatever it was that made them want to get into this kind of philanthropic, effort. This is a job. They do get a salary. They don't do this for free. Their career keeps, upping, and they write papers and they're published and there's articles and there's, that whole kinds of thing. And now there's a film, and I'm sure there's book deals, and it's no different than an archaeologist, I guess, except these people actually do some immediate benefit to the subjects that they are interacting with.
Sure.
And in the case, as we'll talk about a little bit later on in the next segment, in the case of Fred Abrams, who's, work with the team that he had down there in Kosovo at the time. Down there. Everything's down there to me, so it's not even on the continent, but it's down there. In Kosovo at the time, literally, brought to the attention of the Clinton administration, actually changed the way that, the United States government gets involved in human rights violations abroad.
Right.
So that's some huge stuff. That's some historic stuff. And I can't say that, it's like any documentary you've seen before, because these are, historic things that, and it also documents the way that we, as human beings, I think, in this ever increasingly politically correct society, and don't even get me rolling on that part, but, how we also view what our obligations are morally and, what we should do and what we could do, But I do agree with you on that human side that's made you kind of put off the whole thing from the get-go, which is they have kids. They can't do this. They shouldn't do this. You need to leave it to somebody who doesn't have a family and isn't going to orphan their kids.
And that's just kind of one problem I have with it. If you give me a moment here, I'd like to read what the Sundance Film Festival wrote about the E-Team documentary here. And I'd like to
absolutely would.
I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Sure.
When atrocities are committed in countries held hostage by ruthless dictators, Human Rights Watch sends in the E-Team, the emergencies team, a collection of fiercely intelligent individuals hired to document war crimes and report them to the rest of the world.
Right.
Within this volatile climate, filmmakers Ross Kaufman and Katie Chevignet take us to the front line in Syria and Libya, where shrapnel, bullet holes, and unmarked graves provide mounting evidence of coordinated attacks conducted by Bashir al-Assad and now deceased Muammar Gaddafi. The crimes are rampant, random, and often undocumented, making the E-Team's effort to get this information out to the country and into the hands of the media outlets and criminal courts all the more necessary. Now, that's their complete quote right up there from the Sundance Film Festival. Well, I have some questions about this.
Okay, sure.
Fiercely intelligent individuals, I would have to question about going into war zones wantonly, number one. They're war zones.
Right.
And, as we've talked about previously in this show, and as we'll talk about no doubt again in this show, there are other considerations like this husband and wife team and their child and their now second child.
Right.
There's some things there that I have pretty big problems with. But then I guess we have to weigh those against, well, what's the good they're doing? Well, if we look further into this Sundance write-up, the crimes are rampant, random, and often undocumented, making the E-Team's effort to get information out of the country and into the hands of the media outlets and criminal courts all the more necessary. And when I read that line, the first thing I thought is, well, what are all the journalists doing? Hanging out in Paris getting loaded?
Right.
It's a journalist's job, not a documentary filmmaker, to go out and get that day's news in war-torn Syria or wherever you are.
Right. Well, they're not documentary filmmakers either. They made the film about these people who are tasked, this emergency team, to put boots on the ground for these organizations to document the things. Right.
Okay.
The journalists are there. They actually work in conjunction with the journalists.
I did see that in several parts of the film.
Okay.
And it was almost like, the media people asked them, what's going on here? They would give them a report of what's apparently going on there. And then the media people are like, okay, well, what do you got to back that up? And they were kind of tentative in their responses. And I was just thinking, well, okay, it's good that you've gone into this blown up building and gotten apparently manifests of the weapons that were here.
True.
And it's nice. There's the pile of 50 bodies over there all burned and shot up and everything. That's all great. But what have you actually got here as proof of anything? And then Okay, then let's look at the criminal court side for a second there. Okay. If President Obama tomorrow were to say, okay, you know what, I want 25-inch chrome wheels on the presidential limo, I want you to slam that to the ground, we're going to be lighting it up with some neon lights, and I'm going to be walking around with my new gold grill, and I'm going to be capping some people that I don't think are good Americans, and he starts doing that. Are the Human Rights Watch people going to take him to court? And if so, I would ask, what court?
Well, no, and to answer, it's The Hague. It's the place, that international tribunal that the war crimes people are tried at. So that sort of thing. But as far as Obama goes, if he were to start doing that, there'd be too much current media attention that it would be an American court.
Well, I personally think he's going to launch his rap career after his office is up. But
I do too. And to bring up the journalist things, though, if you'll notice, and I do mention this in my next segment too, particularly about Fred in Kosovo, where they go into that building and find those bodies and all those weapons, etc. Mm-hmm. And the journalist, they were. He was with a journalist or two, and they were contemplating going into this other building to try and gather more evidence. Mm-hmm. And, he's like, Fred's like, let's go. And the journalists are like, well, you go ahead, because they didn't want to go, But this is where I believe it delineates from the journalists. It just takes it a little bit above. You have your really brave journalists, and you can consider brave non-intelligent, sure, especially in this situation, because, it wouldn't be us. It just wouldn't be us. I would find more prudent uses of our skills and talents to benefit than putting ourselves in the physical danger and not coming home to our kids at the end of the day, that kind of thing.
Well, and to especially put your fiercely intelligent individuals at risk, shouldn't those be the ones back in the Oval Office advising the president, maybe?
Right.
Just an idea. I don't know. I'm being signaled by the producer that we are hired to promote this film, and I guess I'm.
The film is extraordinary. The subject matter is what we're debating, not the merits of the film itself.
Right. Right.
So.
If you want that, go to Real Talk.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well.
This discourse and discord is going to, I want people to go see this film and decide for themselves anyway, just like I do when I talk about my films on Real Talk.
Well, as any intelligent listener of HTLA would do. So,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not really the issue, but, I just kind of, some of the things in the film that are brought up, it's kind of like, how is it within your purview, because you're with an organization, that you're going to go after war crimes on people? And if so, how come you're not going after war crimes on other people we know that deserve it?
Okay, well, if you look about how, particularly the last couple segments, now we're not talking about Oli and Anna's segments, because they were more about them and what they do and how they've come to be and how they formed the core part of the E-team along with Fred and Peter. Right.
Yeah.
But if you look particularly at what Fred did more than Peter. Peter was involved with Gaddafi and all that kind of stuff. But Fred's work at that time was critical in changing the way our country gets involved in crimes and assisting those, blatant human rights, violations at the moment, with the Clinton administration. And, they were critical in getting this documentation to the Oval Office and throwing it down on the table and saying, look, this is going on and this has to be stopped and somebody has to do it. You're the most powerful people in this country. If you don't take action, who will?
But then my question is, well, where are the journalists? Because you see, where these guys go and what they do, are journalists, CNN, all of them, all the majors, CBS, ABC,
right? But
NBC.
The journalists have an obligation to objectively report, whereas these people are tasked with a subjective interaction and, infiltration into this kind of thing to gather that kind of evidence. Even when a reporter gathers evidence, if technically they're supposed to gather that evidence objectively. Whereas these people go in there and they're looking at that specific evidence that's going to bring these bad guys down. You know, and that is the difference between a journalist and what this emergency team does. You know, so while I do quite understand, you know, all your points and things like that, you know, obviously, as always, I'll have a counterpoint. So, you know, that kind of thing. But absolument. Yeah. So, right. But we've got, you know, more to discuss about that in the next segment, right?
Absolutely.
Because I really want to get into the, you know, other things. All these questions that you're bringing up can better be explained if we talk about, you know, Fred's segment and Peter's segment, like I said, because the segment with Oli and Anna is more about, you know, their story, you know, going to Syria and sneaking across the border in Syria and, you know, obviously being in buildings that are still at the time being bombed and all that sort of thing.
Okay.
You know, and that's all pretty much just kind of basic everyday stuff that I would assume that emergency team does. Whereas, you know, what Fred had done, like I said, was an historic thing. You know, because it changed the way, you know, we look at human rights violations, you know, before and after that incident in Kosovo where there was the mass graves and, you know, Milosevic was actually brought to trial based on the work of the emergency team and Human Rights Watch in conjunction with the journalists that were there at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this is what makes it so absolutely critical, you know, I think.
Okay. All right, well, we're going to go for our third commercial break this evening. And when we come back, we'll get into that on Straight Talk.
And you're listening to Straight Talk with Kate and Crash on HTLA Radio 1, New York.
White Rum has a new captain. Introducing the all-new Captain Morgan White Rum. 5 times distilled for a smoother taste.
4th down, Coach. What do we do?
I'll tell you what we do.
I want you to go on the field. Look for anyone with an O. Let's kill them with kindness. Jimmy, I want you to make balloon animals. Tyler, make little tea cozy. Something fun.
Are you okay?
We will win this for Mother Russia.
Coach, eat a Snickers.
Why is that, Chief?
You get a little loopy when you're hungry. Better?
Better.
Now let's go work! Go get him, guys!
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
I stood outside assessing the situation. I knew it could be rough in there, but how rough, there was no way to know for sure.
Hey, guys.
Daddy, it's pink!
But hey, a new house, it's a blank canvas, and we got a great one, thanks to a really low mortgage rate from Navy Federal Credit Union.
Pink?
So she's a princess. You got a problem with that?
Hoorah!
4 million members, 4 million stories. Navy Federal Credit Union.
What can I get you all today? Sea salt and vinegar, smart pop butter.
I'll take caramel with a side of white cheddar.
And for you, sweetie.
The special?
Lime and salt it is.
You guys ever get tired of just eating popcorn? Because I know I never would.
Awkward.
Discover all 18 flavors of Orville Redenbacher's gourmet popcorn. Simply made, passionately created.
I stood outside assessing the situation. I knew it could be rough in there, but how rough, there was no way to know for sure.
Hey, guys.
Daddy, it's pink!
But hey, a new house, it's a blank canvas, and we got a great one, thanks to a really low mortgage rate from Navy Federal Credit Union.
Pink?
So she's a princess. You got a problem with that?
Hoorah!
4 million members, 4 million stories. Navy Federal Credit Union.
Hello, this is George Takei, and you're listening to Straight Talk with Kate and Crash on HTLA New York.
Oh, you know, you got to have some fun around here. When you're talking about a show as serious as this one, I figured it was time to do my George Takei.
A bit of levity. To the situation.
Yes, so Yeah.
It's appreciated.
So don't sue us, George.
No, George won't sue us.
No.
It's happy for the publicity.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, we are back. You were on a kind of a special big deal here at HTLA Straight Talk tonight on the Straight Talk Monday.
Right.
We're doing a special on the Netflix original documentary, The E-Team.
Right.
And we in our second segment there, we had a clip from the interview we did with them, the two filmmakers and Oli and Anna. And we're just kind of flying around back and forth here with some of the. I don't know. I guess you could say the ins and outs of the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, like we said, and we made clear in the last bit before we went to break that, our discussions and discrepancies and differences aren't relative to the film. The film itself, I believe everyone should go see, and it's great. It's the subject matter that we're, discussing and debating and have a differing opinion.
Well, it's kind of like any good documentary brings you the reality. And really what I think, my point of the show tonight is just to sift through all that reality and trying to come to an understanding for all our listeners of exactly what that is and what it means.
Right. Sure, but isn't everyone's reality subjective to them?
Well, then...
And what their reality is.
Well, sure, but then by that same token, everybody's perspective on what human rights should be is completely different.
It is, isn't it? Because you have cultural differences, and that's why I had asked that question in that interview, that, I know we say that, well, nobody's ever going to bust into my home and take my family member out of my house and torture and kill him and do that kind of stuff. Because
until it happens.
Until it happens, but it hasn't really ever happened here. And it might be because of the way the government is set up and... the way our founding fathers set it up, so we can't, even they'll get shot if they come into the house. We've kind of got that, in our minds that we have a constitutional right to defend ourselves, whether that's appropriate or accurate or not. Or, is it just some kind of cultural thing where, we haven't ever really lived under a dictatorship. I mean, even in England and Spain and Italy and France, they've had monarchs who are tyrannical, and they know what it's like to live under that kind of, oppression. And we haven't a clue. We don't even have a clue. We can say whatever we want. We can do whatever we want. And, if a fraction of the stuff that went on in other countries ever tried to happen in one of our towns, I dare not even speak the words that would come out of the mouths of the people.
Oh, sure.
To the people. Yeah. Right. So that was kind of one of my questions. What is the cultural difference that allows them, to get away with this kind of crap? Is it because they live in adobe buildings in the desert? Is it because they don't have internet? Is it, what is it? Because to me, people are people, and we're all the same on the inside, and I don't care who you are. You break into my house to try and take one of my kids, and I'm going to kill you.
Well, you mentioned during the interview about, how has this changed them, i.e. the filmmakers and Oli and Anna. And, you talked about some of those cultural differences and what would happen if that were to happen here at home.
Right.
And we heard their responses on that, but I don't think, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and hopefully it doesn't bust, but I don't think that we can do that. And the reason I don't think we can do that is because, like you just said a minute ago, everybody's perspective is different. So what I might think may happen if the tables were turned and this kind of stuff was happening in Canada and America, and it was the Middle East who was apparently all together and had this coalition of forces that'll just come in and start carpet bombing and hope they get the terrorists or what have you, or the people responsible, what's their perspective? Maybe they think they got the right guy and they never did.
Well, there's that as well. I mean, but it's very important that you just mentioned, and it was even secondary to your overall point, but I think that is the real critical point here. And it, to me, speaks to the effectiveness of these groups as a whole.
Right.
And in general, everyone's opinion on what is a human right is different. The way that we are in this family, in our home, within our four walls, is completely discrepant to, I'm sure, everybody else on the block. In the town that we live in. We live in a non-PC, patriarchal kind of traditional family that you just don't see anymore. So
well, you don't, and if you do show it, you get ridiculed for it by the PC.
Right, except for our family's secure and happy, and don't go to jail and all that kind of great stuff. Because we have that kind of structure and security, and well, that's a whole nother show. But you know how I feel about that,
right?
But so that's our opinion, and the things that our kids would know better than to do. Some other kids would look at like, well, why not? For example, limitations on the internet, and it gets shut off at bedtime on a school night, and other kids are appalled. Oh my God!
There we go. We're officially questioning Al-Assad's heritage and upbringing.
Well, that's the thing. Other kids around, and they've said it to our kids. That's like, wow. They're cutting off your right to freedom of information and freedom of communication and all this kind of crap. And well, sorry, there's a restriction.
That's kind of another problem for me too. This Human Rights Watch is a global organization, much like Amnesty International. They dictate what the human rights are supposed to be. But from my perspective, being in America, I know firsthand that the majority of Americans don't understand really what their rights actually are. And there's not one of them that I've seen show an example of having a responsibility to any of those rights.
Oh, well, that is a whole entire discussion, isn't it now? And that's exactly my point, though. And that was the whole point of my little, digression there. This is, to us, what would seem normal. Somebody else would take umbrage at, and oh my God, it's child abuse because you don't let your kid have the internet.
Well, and there you go. So
right.
Let's say the Human Rights Watch finds out, the good, wholesome way we raise our kids with the belt and the education and everything else, and that's a problem because that apparently infringes somebody else's idea of what we should be doing.
Exactly.
Kind of think of it as PCers with actual jurisdiction.
Exactly.
So that kind of takes me back to why did we ever go to Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, any of this stuff?
But politically, it's different than personally, like what these guys do. And
don't go political because, the sum and total reason for Afghanistan, which America and Canada are still there, by the way.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. This is what I'm saying. Politically, we go there because we want, like I said earlier, to keep an eye on our assets and our allies, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, but the man we hunted down there, the reason that we've been there for the last 10 years and are still there, and the man's dead now, but we're still there. That was all perpetrated by us. We funded that. We bore that. That's our baby.
Well, yeah, sure, but that was retaliatory for what happened to us. But
it's not retaliatory for what happened to us. They funded them to fight the Russians.
Well, that was the premise. I know, and then it turned and bit us in the butt. I get all that.
Okay,
in there.
So
I understand all that.
I want to see the Human Rights Watch come and arrest those responsible for funding that whole thing.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They go under the premise of, and if you watch the film, in the first segment, they're in a building that's currently being, the planes are flying overhead and they're all scared and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's that individual mother with that 10-year-old boy who's like a deer caught in the headlights and is terrified of yet another bombing in his block and and things like that. And that's who they go to help, and that's who I resonate with, and that's who I connect with as a parent. And then also as a parent, I get infuriated. I don't care if I had nothing but the clothes on my back or not. If the building I live in is getting bombed, I'm out of there with my kids. What are you doing? But that's my perspective. Why stay in a place where you could die at any moment?
Well, and another thing that you should keep in mind, too, is that, you can grab your kids and go down the block or go 10 miles down to another part of town and not have to deal with 30-degree weather and the sun beating down on nothing but you and your kids in the sand.
Well, that's true, too, but that's what I'm saying. They're accustomed to it. That's their place.
Okay.
If they came here and had to make it, they'd face the same, challenges, urban living, they would probably have they'd freeze up and it would be too much, you know what I mean? There's always something, right? So, but we're talking about the basic human survival. But again, it goes back to my question, why let it get that far, And when we're talking about dictatorial regimes, where it's not the government, that the government of the country wants to stop, these factions and these fractional groups that are causing all this terror and this distress, how come the people don't rise up in conjunction with their government to take them out. You know.
Well, and by the same token, why do we think it's okay to introduce an ideology like democracy in a place like Iraq?
Well, I don't. And that's what I mean. This is exactly yet again something that we were alluding to earlier. This is their cultural belief system. Honor killings, of course we don't agree with them. Of course we don't. We're raised American. We're raised democratic. We're raised kind of PC. Even our non-PC traditionalism, maybe we disown them, but we're not going to kill them, But this is what they do, and this is their belief system.
And something that you just touched on, too, reminded me of female circumcision.
That,
and
too.
The cultures around that, and the fact that in our culture, we view that as a bad thing. In those cultures that practice it, it may be horrific, and it may be, oh my God, and it may be crimes against women and all these other things. But wait a minute, who are you, Amnesty International, to say that is crimes against women? It might be crimes against women in New York City. It's certainly not against the ones who have those beliefs, have those rituals, and do those
90%,
things.
It's the mothers and grandmothers that put these young girls in that position to have this done. Because it's a cultural continuation of their beliefs for, however long it is.
Yeah.
We, in the 21st century, think it's an horrific practice.
Sure.
And what the answer would be then to that is not to go there and kidnap the kid and make sure that, if you have the ability to take your child away from that dangerous situation and bring him to America and give him a democratic, American upbringing, because that's where they come, right? Then go ahead and do that. But, to try and stop the practice in its entirety when it's a cultural ingrained thing, the better answer would be education.
I mean, that almost takes me back to the most basic of this, the witch doctor. He was always feared in the tribe because he could do things that nobody else could do. Like he makes fire so that the women can cook, but fire can also burn you and it's bad, so kill the witch doctor.
Well, that's like the Ebola doctors that went into Africa, too.
Yeah, exactly.
That was all propaganda perpetrated, in my opinion, though. That was all. There was some kind of other purpose there. Something riled those people up.
Yeah, but you know what? There always is. There's always another purpose. There's always another agenda. There's always somebody else in some power play role somewhere,
right?
Who is moving pieces to have whatever happen.
And here's the thing: there always will be. Because this is human nature, and this is, there can't be any heroes without any bad guys. There has to be both. They have to exist. And while, Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, they exist to address the most horrific cases that the most attention is being brought to, do as much to help those in those situations. Listen, if I'm kidnapped and I'm in some person's cell, being tortured and all these kind of things.
By somebody else other than me.
That's right. Do I want them to come in and bust in the cell and rescue me and have my government take that guy who was torturing me to jail? And absolutely.
Yeah.
But the massive numbers of that these things occur to, the likelihood is slim. Unless, you have that kind of backing, you get the journalist, well, here's the case of this guy, and you should look into this. And then that's word of mouth that gets it rolling, and, et cetera, which is what happened with Fred and Kosovo and how they found that place with the mass graves and all that kind of stuff. It was, one of the villagers said, hey, what happened over here? And then that's how it happened.
Yeah.
But the most part, the people aren't going to be helped. So having said that, and in that vein, what they do, Ole and Anna and Fred and Peter, is invaluable to the people they save. We might think they're nuts for going over there and leaving their family and putting themselves in harm's way and all this kind of stuff, But the people they save certainly don't feel that way. They're eternally grateful for their intervention and their help. And if it was me or if it was my son over there,
sure. I mean, every time you face a problem, you want somebody to care and you want somebody to help.
Right. And so their purpose to me, just if nothing else, is to care and to bring attention and all that kind of stuff. And, is it effective? Is it making a dent overall? Perhaps not. But to those it makes a dent too. It makes,
a deep dent.
It makes all the world difference. Right. exactly.
There you go.
Huh. Right.
Nicely done.
Oh, well, thank you.
Deep Dents, Straight Talk Monday.
That's right.
There you go.
So I would like to talk now about the bits of the film that weren't discussed during my interview with Oli and Anna, Ross and Katie. Fred Abrahams, his work in Kosovo, as you'll see in the film, is attributed to being the first effective intervention during atrocities as the Human Rights Watch emergency team members. That's what kind of led to the emergence of the emergency team, right?
Okay.
Along with some other reporting agencies, compiled such compelling evidence that it made its way to the White House and changed policy for dealing with current and ongoing incidents they are present to witness, right? So 1998, during the Clinton administration, like I was saying, and the ethnic cleansing being perpetrated there, was the first real attention and action taken during these more modern times. So, for me, the most impressive part was watching Fred go places that so-called journalists were having issues entering, like we were talking about before.
Right.
One even nudging him and telling him, no, you go, fearing a threat was still present. So, that sets them apart from the journalists there.
And another question I have there, though, is that I've seen a number of documentaries specifically about journalists who go into high-threat areas all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what is, I don't know what that is, but we're going to go for our last commercial break, and when we come back, we'll finish up some talking points and wrap her right on up.
My goodness.
We'll be right back in 2, gang.
And you're listening to Straight Talk with Kate and Crash on HTLA Radio 1, New York.
So do you guys think being fast is better than being slow?
Yes! It's better to be fast, to not be bitten by a werewolf, and then you'll be turned into one, and you'll have to stay in, and then you'll have to get shaved because you'll be too hot, and then you're like, which means I wish I was back to a human.
What?
It's not complicated. Faster is better. And AT&T is the nation's fastest 4G LTE network for your iPhone 5.
I've been eating Egg McMuffins since 1984. But when I saw Taco Bell made a waffle taco, I figured I would get with the times. So I got a haircut and I got some tighter pants. Lost my flip phone, got a smartphone, even took down my Loverboy poster. Now I'm eating waffle tacos and AM Crunch Wraps, and I just made like $700 on Craigslist.
Move on from your old McDonald breakfast with Taco Bell's exciting new breakfast menu.
4th down, Coach. What do we do? I'll tell you what we do. I want you to go on the field, look for anything with an O. Let's kill them with kindness. Jimmy, I want you to make balloon animals. Tyler, make little tea cozy, something fun. Are you okay? We will win this for Mother Russia!
Coach, eat a Snickers.
Why is that, Chief?
You get a little loopy when you're hungry. Better.
Now let's go for it! Go get him, guys!
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
It's a nice outfit you got there, man.
I wanted to mix it up a little today.
Sorry, boys. Afraid I can't let you in here with those bowls. This pop-up bowl wing is a bowl-free zone. We make our own bowls here, so you need to finish those out there.
Okay.
What's up, Big Papas?
Bowl offender.
Didn't realize I was in there.
Snack easier with Orville Redenbacher's Pop-Up Bowl. Simply made, passionately created.
And now back to Kate and Crash on Straight Talk, HTLARadio1.com. And that's right, you are back with Straight Talk on this Monday. Straight Talk E-Team, Netflix documentary special. And in our final segment tonight, we're just finishing off some talking points that Kate wanted to cover for the film.
I do.
And so I guess without further ado... I'll turn it right on over to you.
Oh, well, thank you. And so to continue, these are, like I said, bits that are in the film, but I didn't get a chance to cover because Fred and Peter weren't part of the interview that we had done. So the unrelenting work done by Peter Bokart, his work in Tripoli, Libya in 2011 with the mass slaughter of prisoners during the Gaddafi situation. And Well, his work actually did kind of change the game of human rights and really led to the solidifying of the emergency team or E-team, of Human Rights Watch. So
Right.
that's actually what E-team stands for. It stands for emergency team. He's known to have said there's a level of satisfaction to be had screwing with bad people. Only he doesn't say screwing; he says the bad word in the film. But and he's kind of rogue and cowboy about the whole thing more so than any of them. And I found it immensely interesting to watch the footage of Peter among the destroyed buildings of the Libyan war zone, and then the cuts to the pastoral family farm outside of Geneva where he was later interviewed for the film.
Right.
So, and it's just like I was talking about earlier. Us here in America, him outside of Geneva and his family farm, and it's pastoral, it's serene, it's family and all that kind of stuff. And then, to see the other side of the coin where he puts himself and the way that those families live,
Right.
I don't know. It would be so immensely hard for me personally to, go back to how I was and, live the life that I lived before witnessing all those things and before seeing those children. My children aren't afraid of dying. They're not afraid of being bombed. They're not afraid of, being ripped from my arms. But to watch these children have to grow up with that immense sense of fear and insecurity, maybe I'm just too, sympathetic, but, it would be, it's so just for me now as a mother to think of those children suffering even for a moment in that way, not feeling safe, feeling scared, having to witness or live with that kind of feeling. It's just atrocious to me, and I don't know how I could go back and raise my kids the same way after that.
Well, I'm sure that it's not just, of course, soldiers that suffer things like PTSD. I mean, journalists have to deal with that all the time, and by and large part, they deal with it with alcohol and more extreme sports and taking on specific jobs that would put them in even greater danger than they've already faced before. So,
right.
I think the folks in the E-team, they would qualify in that bracket as well. They probably have to deal with a number of PTSD kind of related issues, making that transition back and forth between, the real world and the war zones.
Oh, see, and you said the real world, and I thought you were going to say in their family life.
Well, no, if you listen to any soldier, when they talk about the world, they're talking about here, life at home.
Right, but the real world really is that stuff that those people have to go through, and we kind of live in this protected, sequestered, kind of, what do I always say,
Do what I say and you'll be fine.
No, silly. What do I always say? You always say that I grew up this way. I grew up
privileged, sheltered.
Sheltered, that's it, thank you. Our sheltered kind of existence, whereas, this film shows you how other people don't have that luxury. Sheltering in every sense of the word isn't an option for them.
Right.
So, but, stuff really hits home when you see Peter driving in the car with his son, and in a very relatable way to these things that I was just talking about. His son asks him if Gaddafi stole the people's toys. So, and why didn't you just give the people their toys back? This is a child's perception of war. It's not people getting maimed and killed. And, you see the children dead. And, they have no compunction to whether it's a 5-year-old or a 50-year-old. The things that they do, the atrocious things that they do.
In a lot of these war zones, too, killing the children is part of the goal.
I know, and it's, and, then that leads me to my whole other, my psychology background and my inability to accept that, anyone could do that to anyone. My kids cry and I freak out. I can't stand to see them upset for even a second. How someone could intentionally inflict pain and harm and trauma on another living being, especially a child. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I can see, you know, somebody who's hurt you or perceived that has hurt you or an enemy or that kind of thing. But a child, you know. And then another thing is these mothers that raise their kids to be martyrs and to go and die for their cause and things like that. That's a whole nother mind-blowing thing for me. But so it's very surreal to imagine our very fortunate life outside of a conflict zone and to see how those within it manage to exist with such different parameters, but still having to do the same things that we do every day. You know, they need to shop. They need to, you know, feed their families. They need to go to work. They need to tend to the sick, you know, et cetera. But we do it driving down tree-lined suburban streets and with CVS and, you know, pizza if it's too late to make dinner when we get home. You know, they do it driving carts where roads used to be, through destroyed, almost ghost towns with no stores, no fast food places to pick up dinner. Nothing. You know.
Well, I mean, you see that as a hardship. I would, you know, submit that their culture sees that as normal.
Well, that's another thing, though. That's the thing that I'm saying is why it's allowed there, and we wouldn't tolerate it. You know, that's one thing I think our culture has given us, our comfort level, our expectation of comfort has given us. There are certain things that we won't tolerate being without now.
There's a lot of people in this country who are a lot worse off, actually, than those people.
Well, yes and no, because they're not getting bombed and their children aren't getting ripped out of their arms and bayoneted in front of them and, you know, things like that.
No, here their children get taken away from child services and they're on the street living in an alley having to worry about getting knifed.
Okay, well, that is another entire situation. That's a singular situation. We're talking about, you know, a country, you know, of people, you know, refugees by the thousands, you know, that kind of thing, too. So that just wouldn't happen here. You know, that one film, what was that one film where, you know, a long time ago, supposedly Korea invaded or Russia invaded or something like that. And, you know, all the youth rose up and...
Red Dawn.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I submit it wouldn't even get that far. You know, they come to the houses and try and take us. And, you know, how many of us would be like, screw you? They'd have, you know, a very small handful of prisoners to show for their efforts. You know, because so many of us would just fight, you know, rather than subject ourselves to that sort of thing.
If it was really that way here, to expect that outcome, then I certainly wouldn't think that those people would allow our government to do a lot of the things that our government does and gets away with on a daily basis. So I don't agree.
Yeah, but to who here? That's proven. That's not speculation. You forget that the majority of people are just happy to come home from work, you know, have dinner and watch Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so, right. You know. But some other really great points of the film for me included seeing people just picking up live bombs or missiles, just picking them up on the side of the road and being like, oh, you know, what's this? And that's also something else that we don't really have to worry about here, but yet is commonplace. You know, another thing, and we did talk about this a little bit in the interview, Oli and I, that Human Rights Watch has done significantly, not them particularly, but other members of that organization, has done to eradicate landmines around the world. Mm-hmm. You know, the landmines that the children were, you know, walking on, all that stuff that Princess Diana had really, you know, put herself behind. And which at the time I really didn't understand the gravity or the magnitude, you know, until after her death and subsequent things had come out about the work that she'd done. And I realized what a tremendous thing she had done with that.
Sure. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But I got very nervous when Oli and Anna were in that hotel and they had to hide from the planes flying overhead, you know, especially knowing that Anna was pregnant, you know, at the time of that. And that's just something else that's mind-boggling to me. You know, I wouldn't even fly when I was pregnant, let alone.
What's mind-boggling to me, and instead of the concern for the one woman who was 2 months pregnant at the time, what about the entire town of children?
Well, that's the thing. I am too, but I mean, you know, they live there.
Okay, well, Anna's not there anymore, and they're still there. And now we're pressing the button.
Well, who's pressing the button?
Good old USA, looking for is.
Oh, right. Yeah, is. Yeah, I forgot about that. Well,
and what's next? This whole thing in Egypt with the Palestinians and Israel and everything else. Oh, next thing you know, we're going to be there too. And then what's it going to be?
Oh, I don't think we can go there. That's going to be a huge thing, because that's been going on for a long time.
No, and don't forget about North Korea feeding their people cardboard pizza.
Yeah,
that's got to be a human rights violation right there.
Oh, there's so many human rights atrocities in North Korea. It's not even funny. I think we should all just be there. There are children, hundreds, thousands of children in the streets that people will literally step over in the mud to go and buy some food from the cart there on the road, and the kids are laying in the mud starving. And the only food they get is what crumbs are dropped in the mud, not even given to them. I just want to, when I see that stuff, because my old professor, I had a professor in film school, and he actually did the film Kim Jong-il, and that was my first exposure to North Korea. And when I saw that, I just wanted to go over there and slap them all, just like, they would feed the dogs, the stray dogs, but the children would lie in the mud in the street, and they wouldn't do a thing to help them.
Well, and culturally, there's a reason for that.
I know, and that's mind-boggling to me. See, now
but you got to suck it up, because that's cultural, and it's not a reason for any other country to go and invade them because they don't happen to agree with that.
No, but I would go over there and do what I could for them. So I understand how individuals want to go to these countries and help these people.
Well, then there you go. Now, President Obama is doing what he can for Syria. There you go.
Well, yeah, see, don't confuse the political with the personal again. And that's what...
The sum and total of the choices are the same. The bombs used to be dropped from Syrian planes. Now they're dropped from ours.
Okay, but we're not only talking about Syria. We're talking about, countries that have that kind of, genocide in fighting and all that kind of stuff. That the people didn't ask for and they don't want to be a part of. Yet they're the casualties.
The bottom line is you can't jam a whole bunch of different cultures in like they're trying to do in the United States right now and have everybody play nice.
No, you can't. We don't respect anybody anymore because we're not segregated anymore.
You can't go just invade somebody, wipe out their regime for whatever reasons you see fit, and then turn it into a democracy and then leave and think everything's fine.
Yeah, but there's a lot of places that aren't democracies, that I understand the individuals wanting to go there and to take care of the civilians, and to make sure these kind of things don't happen. That one mother in the beginning of the film, her son was they came into her house, they dragged her 2 sons out, shot them in the head, set them on fire, and left. And these are the things that they go and they address, and they just want these bad people to know that if they do this kind of stuff, there is somebody that's going to find out about it, and there is going to be consequences eventually. It's not just going to go unanswered or unobserved or, whatever it is. But I submit that those people that are, bad enough to do that kind of stuff, they don't care.
Sure.
They don't care either. So there's got to be some kind of preventative. And I don't think it's moving to a global political correctness either, because all you're doing is creating a culture of people that are too weak to take care of themselves because they can't even say something offensive to another person. So when they get invaded and grabbed, they're not going to know how to fight for themselves.
Absolutely not.
So, you're just creating more of the problem,
and it's like you always say, the pendulum always swings both ways.
And it's it's swung way, way too far to the left now, and it's going to start swinging back. And, somebody's going to get hit with that swinging pendulum, and it ain't going to be me. Okay. So, again, when Milosevic started accusing Human Rights Watch and Fred Abrahams in particular of starting stuff, and I'm doing my little finger quotes here, starting stuff that lead to his trial, see, that's something that to me it's just like, wow, and it just blew me away. How this guy was egomaniacal enough to think that, he could get away with all the murder and all the things that he did. And if it wasn't for Fred Abrahams and this, if it wasn't for, those pesky kids and their little dog too,
might have gotten away with it.
He'd have got away with it, right? It's shocking to me, though. Yeah, but again, that's, the egomaniacalness of those kind of leaders and dictators. And see, you're not a tyrant. See, you're not like that. So...
No, if I was, I'd have a country.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you do. You got Taylortown. That's going to have to be good enough. So after seeing this film, like I said, I know why, our government is getting more involved on a quasi-political, personal level with these kind of things. right?
Yeah.
You know, now I can't say that were I making the decisions, I wouldn't order the exact same things that have gone on, you know, like with Kosovo, and once Clinton and his administration found out what was going, how he made sure the world knew and went in and took care of stuff, you know, and kind of changed that. You know, I might do that too. I might do things a lot more heavy-handed and a lot more final.
Decisive,
you know, because there's no political correctness about me. You know, I find out you're hurting somebody else, and I'm going to kick your butt, and you're going to be done, and that's it. You know, no nicey nice, and don't do it again. What is it with the agains? You know, I talked about that in The Walking Dead last night. We were watching that show, and everybody's like, well, if you slap me again, or if you do this to me again, I'm like, what is it with the agains? You know, the first time, that would be the end of it. There's no again, people.
Okay.
You know, there's just no again. All right. Well, perhaps it's most important for us to take from this film that we, sitting where we are, living as we do, really don't have any idea what it's like to live in a part of the world where life and death for those you love is the thing you wake up with and the thing you go to sleep with.
Right.
So none of us have a right to say we should or shouldn't do anything until we're forced to live that way as well.
There you go. So uninvolved.
Well, not uninvolved, but I mean, we can't really judge, you know, like I said.
We are judging by doing what we do.
What do we do?
What this country has historically always done.
What?
Go in and make things the way they want it.
I didn't do that.
I didn't say you did.
Well, do your finger quotes when you say you then, because I didn't do it.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what I'm saying. Right? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. So, yeah. So, anything you'd like to say?
Well, no, I mean, I agree with you. The film is a very good film, shot very well, very good look to it. The filmmakers did a good job technically. The subject matter, I'm going to say this, you know, it makes you think.
Of course.
It makes you think.
And that's what you're supposed to do.
Well, and that's why it's a documentary. So, you know, I really think that anybody, you know, checking out the show tonight should head on over to Netflix.com and give that one a couple hours of your time. It is 2 hours, isn't it?
Oh, well, it's about an hour and a half, yeah.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, it's well worth the watch, and you know, certainly we'd like to hear from you too. You know, you can fire off an email to us, producer at HTLAradio1.com, or hook us up on Twitter. Straight HTLA is the Twitter account. You can find myself at Crash Talkin', and the lovely at Fierce Kitty Kate for the one and the only Kate Taylor.
That would be me. Yeah.
And yeah, let us know what you think about the film, your thoughts, and yeah, as always, there it is.
Right. So, as a final note, we'd like to dedicate this show to the memory of James Foley. He was a cinematographer on this film who, you might remember, was captured in Syria and who was beheaded and broadcast. You know, that beheading was broadcast on international news. And I believe it was one of the first that was broadcast from Syria. There's been a lot since then.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
It's almost like a hobby in Atlanta right now.
Yeah, oh, well.
But yeah, he was the first in the Middle East there. He and another British journalist
right.
Was actually captured and subsequently beheaded the next day on YouTube.
Yeah, that's just something else I don't understand. But, you know, I just don't understand that.
Well, again, I guess it's cultural.
There's that again. See?
There you go. You know, the Damascus steel.
Yes.
Hardest steel known in the sword world, and those swords did cap off a lot of heads hundreds and thousands of years ago. So I would kind of submit nothing's really different here, people. We're all still humans, and we all still do the same human things.
Right.
The only thing that I would hope that this documentary and others like it would do is serve to maybe open up our minds and maybe try and think twice about some different perspectives or better alternatives.
That's right. I agree.
Well, there you go.
That's right. Well, tonight has been enlightening, and thought-provoking and at times upsetting, but it's time to say goodnight, sir.
It is. Good night. And to all of our HTLA listeners, be sure to keep checking the website and listening for all of our awesome shows.
I would like to thank HTLA Radio 1 for keeping us here, bringing you the issues that matter with the people to whom they matter most. A huge thank you to our sponsors and supporters. And, of course, we're nothing without you, our listeners. Last but not least, thank you to my everything, my producer, co-host, and husband, Christopher Crash Jesus Taylor. Now, be sure to be here next Monday, Meeps, because you never know who's going to show up on Straight Talk to talk straight. Be fierce, kitties. Meow. Good night.